to The Author's Den. I'm your host, Mike Talley, and with me today is local celebrity reporter anchor Paula Tutman.
Hi,
Paula,
how are you?
I'm
It's great to
fine.
be here.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
I have to tell you, I really enjoyed your book.
Thank you.
I really did. I read it in a weekend.
I'm sitting here. What else can you say?
It's the truth, I swear. Because it touches on so many things that I'm about. You know, I do television. I'm a little bit of a writer myself. And it was really good.
Thank you.
Really good. Movie all the way.
All right. Check is in the mail.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this industry anyway?
Oh my gosh. You know, the funny thing is I never wanted to be a reporter. I work for WDIV TV. I'm the morning correspondent, and that means basically if it's snowing outside, I'm standing out in a snowbank in a furry hat telling you don't come outside. I never wanted to be a reporter. I always wanted to write. My mom says I started writing at 4. I remember 6. Very avant-garde parents. We were allowed to paint on walls, and we weren't allowed to watch television. All of us got our parents back, my twin sister and older brother. We all ended up in television. But the interesting thing is I was allowed to write on my bed sheets, and my mother would not change my bed sheets until I was finished with that poem or that short story or that chapter or whatever. But now that I'm published, and I actually called her and I said, Mother, do you still have those bed sheets? And she said, no, I burned them. And now obviously she's sorry she didn't keep the bed sheets. Never wanted to be a reporter, always wanted to write. I stumbled into reporting quite by accident, not realizing that it would actually give me fascinating, interesting stuff, compelling stuff to actually write about. And so by stumbling into a business I had no intentions of going into, I actually was able to find my way to what I really wanted to do, and that's to write.
Now, do you write your own stories and everything?
Oh, for the news? Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my goodness, yeah. And I love that. I love that kind of writing, but the book writing is different. Poetry writing, the creative writing is an entirely different animal, and that's what I really like to do.
Well, had you written anything else before the book? Had you?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. I think I'm on my 4th or 5th novel, but this is the first to get published. Poems, short stories, essays. I was that kid in college who asked her friends if she could write their essays and their term papers because I love to write and I love to research, which is what's so great about being a reporter, because they really do go quite hand in hand. You do have to do a lot of research. You have to know a lot of stuff to be a reporter, and so it really works out great. So I get to study, I get to be nerdy, I get to write. People walk up to me on the street and they say, oh, Paula Tutman, I just love you, blah, blah. And I'm, yeah, but when you get to know me, it's really not that big a deal. But man, let me tell you something. When people recognize me from the book, it blows my mind. It is so exciting.
Well, let's talk about the book.
Okay.
How did it come about?
Well, the book is called Deadline, and it's very, very loosely based on my years as a police reporter. I'm a former police reporter. And if you don't know what a police reporter is, it's very different from what I do now. A police reporter basically is not sent out of the building unless someone's dead, dying, or burning and decomposing. I mean, that's the crime reporter. I was a police reporter for 8 years. It was fascinating, troubling, interesting, compelling work. I covered a case in Baltimore, and this was very rare because as a police reporter, you're generally on the street, so you'll cover the crime, but you don't necessarily get to the courthouse level. At least that's how it worked back then. And there's a lot of change, in the industry now. So, a lot of us do all of it. But back then, I basically covered the crime, and I didn't cover the trial. But this particular crime, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and the way the book starts, it actually is exactly the way it was, where these 2 kids had been killed for no good reason. I ended up covering the trial, and the killer developed an obsession with me. And everything that I was afraid would happen to me is pretty much what ended up in the book. The premise of the story of Deadline is a reporter shows up on the scene of a double murder, not realizing the killer is still there, just kind of admiring his handiwork. And when he sees her, he says to himself, oh my gosh, that's my favorite reporter. I love her. I watch her all the time. And he really makes a decision right there that if he keeps killing, she's going to keep showing up to cover those murders, and he'll get a chance to meet her and make her his own. Somebody once said to me, he kind of, he sort of arranged dates with his crimes, which I thought, yeah, you're right. He really did. Again, I have no reason to believe that this man committed any crimes to get to me. I believe the first time we met was at his arraignment when I sat in the front row and our eyes locked. And he looked at me and he said, "Paula, I love you." I just, is there anybody else here named Paula? You know, you just kind of look around like, I've never met this guy. I swear I never met this guy in my life. But his antics and his behavior and during the entire trial was so troubling. And that's what gave me the idea for the book.
You know, another aspect of the book that I really liked was the whole TV news aspect of it. How closely does that resemble real life?
Oh my gosh. Do you know, people say when they read this book, and I love those emails, they say it changes the way they watch the news. But I think I write fiction with a conscience. I want you to ask yourself serious questions. Why does the news industry cover the stories they cover? Why do some stories grow legs and others just disappear? Why do we do some of the things we do? How are reporters viewed? How do we view ourselves? What do we really like? You know, those kinds of questions. One of my author buddies called it faction. It's fiction, but a lot of the things in the book really did happen. My mom was one of my early test readers. Now, you know, you can't use your friends as test readers, but my parents were the kind of parents, they would tell you, you know, it's just not that great. You know, they were very, very honest. And I remember my mom reading it and she said, "Oh yeah, I remember when that happened." Or, "Paula, did that happen?" But the interesting thing about writing a book is the process is so personal and it's so intimate that at a certain point, my mom would say, "Did that really happen?" And I go, "Yeah."
I had to think about it, huh?
You know, I don't remember. You know, the faction and the fiction, the facts and the fiction kind of blend together.
It was fascinating. I really had a good time, like I said,
Thanks.
and I laughed out
Mike.
loud at times, and other times there was still a lot of unresolved questions.
They'll be resolved, don't worry.
Okay, good. You know, let's talk about some of the characters.
Okay.
Because they're really vivid to me. You know, your girlfriend, the guy you were dating.
Not me. Let me say this. P.S. Garrett, the main character, is not me. She's flawed. I believe I'm a whole person.
Okay. Well, she had kind of a sense of humor, especially your girlfriend. Was it Melina? Or?
P.S. Garrett's girlfriend?
Well, I mean,
yeah,
her friend.
I know. Melina. Melina's based on a real person. P.S. Garrett is based on me, and we have a lot of the same similarities. We both love and hate what we do for the same reasons. It's very dichotomous. We both have a conscience. We both answer to a higher authority than a news director. For me, it's my mother. You know, but we are very different. But a lot of the things she's experiencing, a lot of the things she does, a lot of the things she thinks as a reporter, I do think
You've thought
actually.
that,
Yeah, I think, yeah. Well, Lena is the girlfriend that everybody wants to have. She is funny and soulful and sassy and terribly flawed. Mike, one of the things I really love about my characters is I feel they are real. They are flawed. They're not perfect. You don't have, you know, a heroine, and she always say, you know, this chick has issues, and you understand those issues toward the end of the book. You understand why she's made some really bad choices. You understand what drives her and why she's done some of the things she's done. Well, Lena is, you know, she's, you know, they have womanizers. She's a manizer. I just made that word up.
But she's really in your corner.
She's in P.S. Garrett's corner, and they're very similar. If you go back and reread the book, you'll see that they're both survivors, and they're both pimping different stuff. They're both pimping different stuff to survive. They're very similar. They're more similar than you think. Alan George is the worst character. People love to hate him, you know. And in fact, because this is a true sequel, and the second book comes out in April. And you know, I was really trying to decide: do I want to kill off Alan George? And my husband was saying, "You can't kill him. People love to hate him." I'm not going to tell you if I kill him or not. I'll just tell you it's very satisfying what happens to him. But he's the kind of guy you don't want your girlfriend to go out with. He's just a bad, fella.
Well, I found myself being suspicious of him the whole book.
Did you really?
Yeah.
As you should be. It was really funny at one of my book signings, and somebody picked up an extra copy of the book, and she said, I'm getting this book for my girlfriend because she's dating an Alan George. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that is so funny that this character, transcends the book.
It resonates with people.
It really does. It's really fun.
How about the idea that the reporter kind of embeds himself in the story?
We really should be objective. And I'm going to tell you the story. I'll tell you quickly because I hope it makes air. And one of my favorite stories is when I was a younger reporter in Louisville, Kentucky. And there was this incident in which the Ku Klux Klan had been burning pictures of Martin Luther King Jr. And they'd had these public picture burnings. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not even going to be objective. I think the Klan is despicable. I don't agree with them. I think they're awful people. I think they're misguided people. Okay, so I wasn't objective. But I also think they have a right to their opinion. And I was covering that story. And it's really interesting because the PR person, if you can imagine, the Ku Klux Klan with a PR person. Anyway, I get this call from this guy who'd been running the PR. And he said, hey, listen, the Imperial Wizard is coming to town. And he's going to do an exclusive interview with you. And I said, whoa, first of all, wow. Second of all, why me? And he said, of all the reporters, you're the only one who's been fair. I'll never forget, J.W. Farron's the Imperial Wizard of the Invisible Empire of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, did I really want to hear what he had to say? Yeah. I'm a journalist. Was I going to agree with any of it?
Right.
No, absolutely not. But at the same time, here I am, a young reporter. I'm getting this exclusive story. And how bad a day are you having when the Ku Klux Klan has to entrust its story to a young black reporter? You're having a really good day. You know what I mean? And they are not. But that's how objective I'm able to be. When I think I can't be objective, I ask my executive producer to police me and look at my script. And I'll say, I think I'm objective here, but you know what? I think somebody needs to look at my script.
Let's talk about the book just a little bit more.
Okay.
When did you start writing it? How long did it take?
I love that question because I actually started writing the book, I don't know, maybe it may have been 5 or 6 years ago easily. It may have even been longer. But I write with a very unusual process. I write from something I call the voice. Not voices, that's, those are issues. But when I'm writing, I can actually hear and see what the characters are hearing and seeing, which is why I think a lot of people say the book puts you there. You feel like you're a reporter. You feel like you're driving around in those cars. You feel like you're covering those stories. And I think that's because of the process in which I use to write. Consequently, I also knew how the book ended. And I didn't want to take myself there. And so I actually abandoned the book at the last 2 chapters and wrote several other books. But I kept wandering back to this one, then I just kind of ignored it. And finally, an agent said, this is never going to get published if you don't finish it. And Mike, I got to tell you, it was 2 of the most miserable weeks of my life finishing this book because I knew how it ended. But when I actually started doing the last chapters, it only took 2 weeks. The very first draft took 26 days, and it was 900 pages. So I'm nothing if not verbose. And then a friend of mine said, you need to split that book in half. It's the rewrites that take the time.
So you're telling me that book 2 was actually part of book 1 initially, and you broke them into 2?
Yeah, as an unknown, as a nobody in the publishing industry, everybody said, nobody's going to publish a first-time author with a 900-page book. You got to cut it down. And no, you're kidding, no. But finally, I heard it. Somebody said that to me, and I heard it. So I actually went back and I finished the book, and then I had to cut it down. You can read book 2 without reading book 1. You'll be able to catch up very easily.
Let's talk more about the publishing, because a lot of people have trouble publishing. They're intimidated by it. They don't know who to talk to. How did you get involved with publishing?
Well, I think one thing that I had to my advantage is that I love to write. And I did want to be published. I desperately wanted to be published. And I got so many rejection letters that my mom would say, well, you know, John Grisham got 32 rejection letters, and well, you know, John Grisham got. And finally, I just said, Mother, that's not helping me.
Wasn't encouraging.
It's
yeah.
not encouraging at all. But you know, it just depends on who's looking at it, whose eyes are on it. But I remember I was covering a story. I was in Mackinac, and my agent called me, and she said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in a car." Yeah, so I'm sitting down. And she said, you know, there's a publisher who loves your book. How exciting.
Let me back up a minute. You have an agent because you're a talent? Is that how you...
I have two agents. I have an agent for my television work, and I have a literary agent. And the twain do not meet. They know of each other. They know who each other are.
So did your literary agent represent the book in
Yes.
some ways?
Yep. She represented me. She found the publisher. She negotiates the deal. She does all the talking to him.
Do they have a publishing house? Did they introduce you to somebody?
No.
What happened?
It's Daily Swan. He's a very small publishing house. Not a beginner, but very small. And in fact, I'm his best-selling author. And my book has enlarged his publishing house. He takes a look at the book. They have an editor. They go over the book. They send back corrections. You send back corrections. They tell you to do things. You say, no, this is it. I'm married to it. They say, never mind. You say, I'm getting a divorce. You know?
You want it published.
Right. You want to get published. You know, I love having a small publisher because it gives me a lot of freedom, and because I have been able to develop a personal relationship with him, and because I have been able to have input into the final book. And I'm a little bit of a control freak, just a little bit. So that works for me, you know. And I got to wonder if I'd had a big publisher, if I'd have been able to handle a lot of the things that are just out of your control. Because this is the other thing. When you are published by someone else, you control very little. A lot of people don't realize that. You don't make a lot of money at first. You know, you're not Stephen King, you're not Lee Childs. You don't make a lot of money. You control very little. But because I had a small publisher, I had a lot more say.
Let's talk about the promotion of the book. How does that fit into the publishing and everything? Or is that left on you, or do they help you with that?
Both. You know what? The publishing industry isn't what it used to be, and you know that yourself. So think about these digital books coming out. You know, that changes the whole scale of royalties, and printers are going out of business. Michigan printers are going out of business because they don't have the work.
Somebody can read a file now instead of seeing
That's
print.
right. So you send something electronically. You know, I remember when I first started working on this book, and I would send a manuscript out, and it would weigh 8 pounds. And now I just send, you know, I just push send. So it's very, very different. Conversely, publishers don't have the budgets. I work for and volunteer for an organization I belong to, International Thriller Writers, and I was one of their debut authors. Thousands of authors want to be in this organization. They choose 12 or 13 authors every year, and I was one of the authors they chose as a debut author. So they mentor me and they help me, and they give me a lot of opportunities. And I also write for their website, which means I get to interview what I call real authors, best-selling authors. And it's so interesting to talk to these best-selling authors about their work, and they've sold millions of books, and people know who they are. And they say, "Oh yeah, I've got to pay for my own travel." That's not unusual anymore. You know, it's a very small pyramid, I think, of writers at the top who probably, you know, being flown around by their publishers and chauffeured around. That's just not happening to the everyday author. You know, one of the things that my publisher said that he really loves about me is that I'm a worker. And I'm a worker at my regular job too, but I don't mind promoting my book, and I love, you know, I don't sign autographs. When people walk up to me and say, "Can I have your autograph?" And I just think, oh, if you got to know me, you'd know why that, you know why you really don't want my autograph. You know what I mean? But I love signing books. And so it's a labor. It is a labor. It's a labor of love. When the first book came out, I did 30 book signings in 5 months. I was exhausted. But I loved it.
And you got the word out and you met people.
I got the word out. I met people. People were reading me. You know what it's like for a stranger to pick up your book and to be reading you? Oh my gosh. I was at a Red Wings game, chattering, talking to my girlfriends. What game? There's a game, we're talking. And she said something, and I leaned my head back, and I was laughing, and I hit the knee of a man behind me. And I turned around, and I said to his wife, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just chattering. I didn't mean to put my head on your husband's knee. I wasn't flirting, I promise." She said, "Oh, I know you weren't. But by the way, I'm reading your book, and I love it." And I thought, a complete stranger
That's
is
great.
reading my book. People got my book for Christmas. Are you kidding me? Does it get any better than that? No.
The second book, is it a continuation or is it a separate book altogether?
It is a true sequel. It is a true sequel, and a lot of people really got mad at that. But I thought, I'm a new author. I don't have anything to lose by taking this risk. I think Stephen King would be proud of me. It's a true sequel. So you're not able to skip to the end. The book leaves off, it says to be continued, and the second book picks right up. Now, the interesting thing is, and that was the fun thing about doing rewrites, when I had to break the book into two parts, because it had to be self-contained. And it is self-contained. It starts off at chapter, I think, 18. I haven't looked at this in a couple of days. It starts off at chapter 18, but it takes you all the way back and all the way forward, and it catches you up almost immediately. And then you get some resolution. You hate Alan George, you'll be satisfied. It ties up a lot of those loose ends. I appreciate you reading the book. Like I said, the people who read it say they don't watch the news the same way. There are lots of interesting stories. It's not just a mystery thriller. It's a romance. It's a woman's struggle to find out who she is and why she is the way she is. It puts a microscope on this news business, so you explain a lot more. You understand a lot more about it. A lot of the things really happened. You know what? I hope you'll laugh when you read the book. I hope you'll cry. You know the part I'm talking about. I hope you'll feel good about it. And I hope you understand that we're responsible for a lot of the stuff that happens to us. I hope the book makes you think. I hope it makes you ask some questions about yourself and people around you.
It does make me think back to the choices that your characters made in the book, and the repercussions or the...
Absolutely. In her personal life and in her professional life. The interesting thing about P.S. Garrett is she's the reporter's reporter, man. She, when she sees a story, she knows it and she goes after it. But the interesting thing is, depending on what happens in that story, it lowers the bar of acceptability of behavior. You know what I mean?
No, not exactly. What do you mean?
Well, for instance, she's not the kind of person who's going to walk up to you and say, "How do you feel that your kid just got run over by a truck?" Unless the other station's standing there asking the question, and she's going to put her microphone in there. So she may not ask the question, but she's going to put the microphone in there. One of the things I also like, as long as you ask about more of the content of the book starts off with a prologue and talks about feeding the monster.
Right.
The book starts off, "I hate my life today."
And the monster being the newscast.
The monster is the newscast. And what you really do find out in the book is who the real monster is. Is the monster a beast that can't be sated? It's always hungry? Or is the beast really the reporter? Or is it the audience that craves that kind of information?
Right, that feeds it.
That's right.
They want to see it, they want to hear it.
Who's feeding this monster? Who's the monster really? And who's feeding it? I think the book really does answer that question.
Well, would you put yourself out of a job if you reported different things?
What do you mean?
If you reported good news?
I don't think so. I believe in balance. I think people don't, you know what? I think people don't just want to see blood and guts. I think people need to feel good about what they're seeing. I think they're uplifting stories. I believe in balance. We do have to cover the bad stuff. We really do. But we need to cover the good stuff too.
I seem to recall that the good stuff, you're involved with some other activities outside of journalism.
I am. You've done your homework.
We want to talk a little about that?
Stalker. I have a foundation called Children's Tooth Fairy Foundation, and we pay for dental care for uninsured kids in 4 counties. What a labor of love that is. Now, it's not needy kids, it's uninsured kids. And that means our onus, our responsibilities are greater, our net is larger, because so many people are losing their jobs and losing their benefits. And so if you go to my website, deadlinethebook.com or childrenstoothfairyfoundation.com, you can find out whether or not your child qualifies. The bottom line is if you have a child under the age of 12, we ask very few questions. If you have a child under the age of 12 and you live in Wayne, Washtenaw, Macomb, or Oakland County, your child has a dentist. It's that simple.
That's nice.
Not an orthodontist, but a dentist.
That's very nice.
I also do some other, I work a lot for the POH Riley Foundation. I do a lot of work for Haven. I had really good parents. They really did make me understand that I have a responsibility to others as much as myself. And I take that really, really seriously. That's part of why I love, I think, maybe being a reporter, because I can get return phone calls that I wouldn't normally get. I can raise a lot of money. Really, I get a lot of work done in my community. And honestly, Mike, I feel really good about that. I really do. I love that I'm able to get a lot done.
If somebody wants to find the book, they want to buy it, they want to read it, where can they go?
It should be in any bookstore. If the bookstore doesn't have it, they can get it. And you know what I'd like to say about that is, yeah, you can get it off of Amazon. That's true. And it might be a couple of dollars cheaper. But if you go to your independent bookseller, you're keeping a bookseller in business. I love independent booksellers. I love Borders, I love Barnes & Noble, I love Walden's, I love I love any bookstore. But if you go to a small bookstore and order this book, then you've just saved somebody's job. And that's why I do a lot of my book signings at the independents, because I really do respect what they're doing.
Before we go,
Yeah.
have you read any good books lately other than your own?
There's a book I just wrote a review on, and it's not even out yet, by Erica Spindler, called Blood Vines. It's very, very interesting. P.J. Parrish, Christy Monty, and Kelly Montgomery. Gotta check those names, so I better not say their names. But they're two women who grew up in Detroit, and they go by the name P.J. Parrish. And I just finished working on their book. Stephen King and Larry McMurtry are my favorite writers. Love Larry McMurtry. He gets you in the first paragraph, won't let you go. Love him. Stephen King, whenever I have writer's block, he's brilliant.
What was one of the earliest books that you ever read that you remember?
Thanks for asking that question. I'm an Orwell fan. I think George Orwell was brilliant. And I think if you read Animal Farm, which will only take you a day, if that, it speaks to what's going on in your office place. It speaks to what's going on in our country. It speaks to what's going on with the banking industry. It's brilliant. Obviously, Animal Farm, George Orwell, 1984, George Orwell. Love Pearl S. Buck, The Good Earth. I reread it every year at least once. I can remember as a kid reading Octavia Butler, who is a black science fiction writer. Love her stuff. Wild Seed, Kindred. They're making movies on this stuff right now, and nobody's giving her credit. She's a brilliant author. I don't think she's alive anymore, but a brilliant author. I'm a reader. I love books. I love the way they feel, and I love the way they smell. I don't think I'll ever have a Kindle or a Nook, because I like feeling those pages.
I'm with you there. Folding something over, making notes in the margin, whatever.
Look at this beautiful facility. Would we have this facility if everybody had a Kindle? Do you know what I mean? How can you not look around and see all these amazing books and know there are people out there who studied and researched and wrote these books? I'm a bookie, man. I'm a nerd and a bookie. I write the beginning of a book, I write the last chapter of the book, and then I write what's in between. So I know how the book is going to begin. And you know, it kind of changes a little bit, but you basically have a roadmap. If you have the beginning of the book and the end of the book, at least for me, everything else is stream of consciousness.
I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thanks.
Paula, I wish you best of luck with your book.
Thank
and
you.
I'm really looking forward to reading the second book.
Hey, guess what? This one's for you.
Oh, I can't
And
wait.
it's signed.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You get it before everybody else. Let me know what you think. Have me back.
I will.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.